Developing out of Washington is the leader of the Democrats in the House, Hakeem Jeffries of New York, live on Capitol Hill. Remember, President Trump last hour said good things could happen with regard to health care. Let's see what Jeffries is saying about the shutdown.
If Congress doesn't act by the end of this year, because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, premiums, copays, and deductibles for tens of millions of Americans are skyrocketing all across the country in a manner that will deprive people of health insurance or lead to medical bankruptcy. We know hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health clinics all across the country, including in rural America, are closing because of the Republican health care crisis. And they've effectively ended medical research in the United States of America. This is a crisis that requires urgent action now. And Leader Schumer and myself have repeatedly made clear to the White House and to Republicans here on Capitol Hill that we're ready to sit down to work things out, but it has to be done in a way that actually improves the quality of life of the American people and doesn't continue to undermine it, which is what Republicans have done all year, hurting everyday Americans in order to reward their billionaire donors. Questions?
Leader Jeffries, Mr. Leader, thank you.
Let's bring in Democratic strategist Kaivan Shroff, Republican strategist Matt Klink on this. Matt, start us off. I thought that was interesting what Hakeem Jeffries said. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he said we're, quote, ready to sit down, all right? Because the president last hour said he's already talking to Democrats and that good things could happen with regard to health care, which made a lot of people think, well, maybe there's a deal coming soon. I mean, I don't know. How do you read it, Matt?
Well, it's a little rich coming from Hakeem Jeffries. First, he's relitigating the 2024 election where the Democrats lost everything. And as that great statesman Barack Obama said, elections have consequences. The House has done its job. The Senate needs to pass something, if pass anything. And until they do that, there's really no need to meet. I mean, look, the reality is right now is that the Republicans have said that, you know, the quote unquote temporary extension of Obamacare, which is what the Democrats passed through a partisan vote, they now want to make permanent, which only in Washington, D.C. does temporary become permanent. They want to reverse Medicaid reforms, and they want to resume Medicare payment or welfare payments to undocumented immigrants. That's never going to sell with any Republicans, period.
Now, Kaivan, the first reporter asked Jeffries if he'd heard from Trump, and Jeffries said it's been radio silence. So respond to Matt's points, yes, but I do think this is strange here with Trump having said last hour live when we covered it that he's been speaking to Democrats. So not clear what's going on here.
Yeah, well, you wonder who. I mean, I got to say, though, to my colleague, it's not true that Democrats lost everything, and that's why Republicans are in this position, because they don't have all the votes that they need to pass this through, and that's the way that democracy works. And the fact is, Donald Trump, when he was out of office, said that the buck stops with the president. I think that was true then. I think it's true now. He's dedicated a collective 1 hour to trying to negotiate this with Democrats, of which he spent some portion of the time passing around 2028 MAGA hats. So he hasn't taken this seriously. And frankly, it looks like the messaging is playing out in Democrats' favor. Of course, the American people lose at the end of the day, but getting to talk about healthcare, getting to talk about how Mike Johnson will not seat a duly elected member of Congress, getting to talk about how they're doing that to delay a vote on the Epstein files. It's all working. So Donald Trump needs to show some leadership. And I do think Democrats are going to hold out until they can get a win.
What do you think are the merits, though, Matt, of the issue on these subsidies, the Obamacare subsidies, and whether there's any give for Republicans? Again, to me, Trump hinted last hour that there is. I had a Republican, Kevin Kyler from California, on last hour saying that he thinks that, you know, it's a concern for him as well, the ACA subsidy issue. So it seems like there was some give. Like, in other words, more than, hey, we're not going to talk at all. Like, they'd be willing to give something before, you know, to get this thing open.
Connell, I will repeat back the words that I've heard Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi say all the time. Of course we can have that conversation, but not with the axe of Damocles or sword of Damocles hanging over our head in the government shutdown. Pass a clean CR, open
No, but
the
that's what I'm asking. I'm saying it's that you think it's still clean CR. I'm saying it sounds like there might be some give on the Republican side, that it's not just a clean CR, but you still think it's that.
It's going to be a clean CR or nothing. And look, let the Republicans will wait. Once the pain starts, then we'll see. Then people's polling in districts. Then we'll see where people are really feeling pain, and then the real negotiating will start. I mean, the cuts in the military, WIC, and SNAP haven't even hit yet. So once those start hitting, we'll see where the true pain is felt. But I think right now both sides have locked their heels in, and Democrats want to negotiate spending more money and repealing some of the money that the Republicans cut. That ain't going to happen.
One more on this, Kaivan, then I have one more issue for you guys. But go ahead, Kaivan.
No, I was just going to say, you know what? Past is prologue. We've sort of seen this movie play out before, and voters did blame Donald Trump and Republicans the last time there was a government shutdown. We have the data on that.
The split. I mean, we saw the poll. We had one poll where you're right. There was a little more blame for Republicans. I think Matt makes a point too that a lot of this hasn't kicked in. I know. No, I hear you on the last shutdown, but this one I'm talking about that there was more blame for Republicans as well. But I think Matt's point could be legit that it could take some time to figure all this out. The other issue, there's some polling that I wanted to talk to you guys about, was this Jay Jones thing in Virginia, running for Attorney General. So he had these texts. Matt, start us off on this. I know this is getting a lot of attention. I mentioned earlier, especially I was looking at social media, before I came into work this morning. A lot of Republicans are talking about this and saying more Democrats should be. Here's some of the text. It's just this political opponent of his who said some, disgusting things about it, threatened violence, essentially. Jones himself has put a statement out on the text that he said it. He says, reading back those words made me sick to my stomach. I'm embarrassed, ashamed, and sorry. I've reached out to Speaker Gilbert, who's the politician in question, to apologize directly to him, his wife, Jennifer, and their children. I can't take back what I said. I can only take full accountability and offer my sincere apology. I guess the question for you guys politically is this a wider story than just this race for state attorney general in Virginia? Matt, what would you say?
Well, two things. One is leadership is doing what's right when nobody's looking. That's really not leadership for a person who's running for the top law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia. I will commend him, though. Look, he acknowledged that he screwed up. There was no equivocation. He was direct. I mean, I give him a great applause for that, and I think that he deserves credit for that. And look, whether or not he stays in, that's for the voters of Virginia to decide. But he screwed up, and he did the right thing. He owned up to it, and he publicly apologized and acknowledged the mistake. That's exactly what I would have told him to do if he were my client.
What about your side of it, Kaivan? Pressure from other Democrats, wider implications for the party and other races? I mean, how do you see the story?
Yeah, I mean, just personally, I do think it's absolutely disgusting. And I think secondarily, it's a judgment. Speaks to a real lack of judgment for somebody both in political office who definitely knew at the time that he would be seeking further political office to put that in text. So double whammy there, and I do question his judgment. And I think any other time, any other environment, he'd be out already. But the reality is, I think a lot of Democrats feel burned by examples like Al Franken, where they feel like they've tried to hold a higher standard and win the moral high ground and then not been met with that same sort of level on the Republican side. And so I think a lot of folks strategically view this as, look, if they take him out, if they criticize him, they're guaranteed to have a Republican AG of a state at a time when Donald Trump is attacking states that he disagrees with. And you really need a blue state AG to stand up to these violations of the Constitution. I'm not saying that's a justification. I'm saying that's some of the logic that I've been hearing. And I do think that, when you have a president who just this weekend is telling the military that Democrats are gnats that need to be taken care of, it doesn't help anyone. And I know we can all come on these shows and do the tit for tat and do the whataboutism, but isn't there something to be said for leadership coming from the top? No, I'm making an additional point. Just listen. There's something to be said for leadership to come from the top when you control every branch of government. I'm just saying, a judge had her house set on fire and Harmeet Dillon at DOJ is tweeting jokes about it. It's disgusting. Right.
Leave it there, Kaivan. I was going to say that, Matt, your facial expressions were almost your response during that, but just a quick final word, then we got to go. Tight for time.
No, look, we agreed that Jay Jones's response were not responsible. Right. They were the wrong thing to do, leaving aside everything else. And there is no whataboutism or a but. It was a wrong thing to do. He screwed up, and he manned up, and he did the right thing.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kaivan. I do have to go. I appreciate you both.